It's kind of the central mission of OTR, to show how rewarding it is to explore the back streets and hidden alleys in search of the very best food, stories, and secrets. And here in Thailand, well, that's pretty much a perfect explanation for this. This is the food of Myanmar, Thailand's troubled and war-torn neighbor, which holds more culinary surprises than just about anywhere. From rare ingredients to unique flavors, bright and vibrant salads and rich, savory curries, Burmese food has its own character, a magic that here hides in plain sight. But that's changing. A generation after the first waves of refugees and migrants flooded across the border, for the very first time, there are signs that soon it might not be unknown anymore. Today, we're tracing the path of Burmese cuisine, from the factory towns of Thailand's coastal south, all the way to the heart of downtown Bangkok. It's going to be a very good day. It might sound crazy in a country with 2,000 miles of coastline, but until 1960, Thailand actually imported most of its seafood. Back then, fishing was done with a hook and a line, and the stuff sold in markets mostly came from overseas. But then, a new innovation changed everything. By 1966, Thailand had built a fleet of 3,000 ocean trawlers, which scooped up everything in their path, a fleet that would triple by 1980. At first, the fish caught were sold to the domestic market, but so efficient were the country's fishing boats that soon, attention would shift to export. To build the facilities where seafood could be canned or packaged, stored, and shipped, a location would be needed with a deep water harbor, close enough to Bangkok and the container port for easy transport, but far enough away for cheap land and lots of open space. The area here in Samut Sakhon was the obvious choice. In all of Thailand, it's actually the place with the oldest recorded history of the fishing trade, with shipwrecks found dating back 1,200 years. Anyway, where things really started to boom was in 1977 when a new company was founded called Asian Pacific Thai Tuna Company, today known as Thai Union Group. Consolidating operations and investing in large facilities, Thai Union would grow to become the largest employer in the industry, and today, no matter where you are in the world, well, there's a good chance you've eaten something processed, packaged, and shipped from their facilities in central Thailand. And those facilities are here, in a village called Tha Sai, where all told almost 250,000 workers cut, clean, and pack the fish and prawns that head for grocery store shelves around the world. This is the backbone of Thailand's seafood industry, and as with labor jobs everywhere, it's sustained by migrants. More than 75% of the workers here come from Myanmar, and once a week, right in the center of the Thai Union Company complex, well, it's the day off. The Sunday Burmese Market, an impromptu gathering for all the migrants in the province, so large that for one day each week, this would be one of the 15 biggest cities in Myanmar. So I got 2 samosas, I got a donut for Jasper, and I got, thank you, I got something which looks like a pancake with shaved coconut inside. Okay, thank you. I'm gonna get some betel nut, because when in Rome, when in Yangon. It's hard for me to talk because I have the betel nut in my mouth, but that's the factory. So that's the biggest part of the Thai Union Company factory right back there. And so the market every Sunday is here, and you can see where, this is all worker housing. All around us is worker housing. We've already seen other parts of the factory on the opposite side of the road. but if you look on a map, it's mostly concentrated back there. And then the main market we haven't even entered yet, and it's right up at the street to the left. And so I'm already complete sensory overload from the music and the sounds and the betel nut that I'm chewing on while I've just finished a coconut ice cream. But yeah, what an amazing, colorful, vibrant place that I'm so happy we came out to. Now, Thailand might have a reputation as a tourist country, but here, the real economy is all about export, which is responsible for 10 times as much revenue as every penny spent each year by all foreign visitors combined. In this one province, there are more than 6,000 factories, and altogether, it contributes above 3% of the entire world's seafood output. For the workers, almost all of them Burmese migrants, it's not an easy life. Workdays are up to 14 hours long, often in freezing conditions. They live in dormitories, 8 or even more to a room, and earn an average of 10,600 baht per month, or about $300. But compared to what many of them left behind, it's at least a chance at a better life. And that story goes back to the same point in time when Thailand first began to profit from the bounty of the ocean. In 1962, in what was then a thriving country, General Ne Win and his supporters overthrew the Myanmar government, plunging what was then called Burma into violent crisis and destroying a growing economy. Now, I won't go too far into what happened after that. I mean, we already covered it in one of our videos. But while Thailand and much of Southeast Asia has grown and modernized, Myanmar hasn't. Today, in the country, the per capita GDP is $1,100 a year, the second lowest in Asia, ahead of only North Korea. The president is in prison in solitary confinement, there's genocide in the West, violence in the North and South, and every day seems to bring more troubling news. As many as 1 out of every 10 people born in Myanmar has fled the country or left by choice, and for many of them, their best chance at a new life meant packing a bag and coming here, to a place where at least there's a job and a paycheck and, once a week, some sense of community. We've said before on this channel that as many as 1 out of every 15 people in Bangkok is Burmese, and the city has its share of Myanmar restaurants and street stalls. But nothing like this. An entire Burmese town where the signs are in Burmese, the goods sold are Burmese, and all around, speakers blare Burmese pop music. But most of all, there's stuff like this. So finally, with all the background out of the way, we can get to the part where this is a food video. Alright, as usual here on OTR, we didn't set out on this mission looking for some deep and profound story. This all started because we were just looking for a good meal. Now, this video is not about me, but if I'm being honest, since the first time I discovered this stuff, I've fallen completely in love with Burmese food. It's just so different from anything else. It's easy to say that of course it's great, it's a country right between China, India, and Thailand, but that's almost disrespectful of how much of Burmese food is completely unique to Myanmar itself. I mean, the place might be pretty much unknown around the world, but it is a massive country, bigger in land area than Vietnam and Malaysia combined. Anyway, Burmese food might have 1,000 variations and massive diversity, but to try to sum it up in a few sentences, it's right at the junction of rich and refreshing, light and packed with flavor. It's not sweet, leaning towards salty and sour with a massive use of fermented ingredients like fish and vegetables and even tea leaves. It's a masterclass in textural contrasts, with crispy and soft side by side in almost everything from soups to salads to street food. And while there are a great deal of dishes recognizable from the influence of things like India's chettinad curries and China's stir-fries, there are also a lot of things that don't really have any analogs. Endemic items shaped by thousands of years of history, then lost to the outside world because of the same reasons why there are so many refugees and migrants in factory towns like this. Even in a place like Bangkok City, it's hard to find Burmese food. Not because it's not there, but we just don't know what we don't know. Hell, I walked past a Burmese lunch counter every day for a year before I understood that it was Burmese. Failing countries don't invest in marketing, and places at war don't get a ton of food vloggers. So since it stays under the radar, finding the real stuff means you might have to work for it. But the payoff is a meal like this, in the very back corner of the inside part of the Sunday market, in the shadow of a seafood processing plant an hour away from the big city. The main reason we came all the way out here. All right, so I'm not sure we'll be able to use this because there is so much music playing everywhere around us, and we've been begging everyone just give us 5 minutes and turn this down so we can roll tape. There's still music, but we're gonna be fast. Let me explain to you what's on the table. So this is the nanjito that we just tried. Again, please forgive my pronunciation. I don't speak Burmese. I've never had it as a spicy dish. I've never had the street food version. I've only ever had this at a couple of restaurants. It's amazing. This I'm about to try. Don't know what that is, but saw people ordering it. The onak khao soi, which is one of the world's great noodle dishes. The stuff we picked up earlier, and Daria's coconut pancakes, and the music's starting to blast again, so we may need to wrap this up. Let me try their onak khao soi. It's good, yeah? It's the first meal of the day for all of us, so other than the ice cream, and in my case, the betel nut, let's try this. This is a house specialty. If you look around us, this is what everybody's eating, and this is what I saw on somebody's plate that made me decide that this was where we're gonna start. And then when I went to the kitchen and I saw that they also make the onak khao soi, and this, which I have no idea what that is. It's going to be a very good day. The concentration of incredible looking food in this area, at least on a Sunday, was so much fun. Everywhere there were plates, bowls, or bags of something or another that looked fascinating and unfamiliar and really, really good. But maybe the most surprising thing about this place was that in a country where so many people come here to eat, well, there were no outsiders at all, and one of the vendors even told us it had been months since she'd seen another foreigner. It's so off the radar that there's almost nothing online about it. No obvious pins on Google Maps or anything, and we only really found this place thanks to a tip from one single photographer, who I'll link below in the description. Nice work, Ulf. But maybe that does make sense, since here, Burmese food is pretty much only targeted to Burmese customers. In fact, I never really thought about it until now, but every time Daria and I have gone out for Burmese food, we've always been the only foreigners we've seen. And without trying to get too philosophical, well, why is that? Why are we the only outsiders we've ever seen when we've gone for Nigerian or Latvian, but there's always an international crowd at Bangkok's Indian or French restaurants? Why, out of 195 officially recognized countries, have only a handful of cuisines made it to the mainstream? It's not about size. I mean, hell, my old home, Indonesia, is the 4th largest country on Earth, but its amazing food is almost anonymous. It's not quality. I mean, if it was, we'd all be eating Ugandan every morning and Sri Lankan in the afternoon. I spent 5 days on a business trip in Norway and had the best soup I've ever tried. I was so enamored with one meal we had on a remote island in the Philippines that I changed my own restaurant menu to Filipino. It's not luck. The cuisines that are world famous certainly do deserve their stature, but it does seem like it takes a special set of circumstances. Mass immigration into trend-setting cities, government investment in cultural diplomacy, maybe a mention in a popular movie, something to stand out above equally deserving neighbors. What do they say about our oceans? Something like 2% has ever actually been explored. Well, sometimes it feels like that when it comes to food. Maybe that's why people like us get so hooked on traveling and eating, because there are so many surprises everywhere, and sometimes you try something and you just want to shout, "How did I never know about this before? How does everyone not know about this?" But I guess that's not the biggest problem for the Burmese migrants in places like this, who are just lucky to get out and to survive. The Burmese migrants who work in Samut Sakhon seafood factories are just a fraction of the total who've left Myanmar within this generation. It's estimated that there's somewhere around 3 million Burmese in Thailand today, with more spread around other parts of the world, and whether or not it's intentional, when stories like ours start tossing around numbers, we turn the people into statistics. The life of a migrant when told from long distance sounds more like a math equation than a three-dimensional image. 200,000 migrants in this village, $300 a month salary, 8 people to a dorm room. It's all so cold and distant that honestly the last thing I expected to find here was a soul. Something indescribable but very familiar. Here at the market, people laughed and sang karaoke and video called old friends. On the outskirts between the dorm buildings and warehouses, there were creative cafes with murals on the walls, posters advertising an upcoming Burmese music festival, which is coming up in just a few days. And the biggest surprise of all was down at the end of a dirt road, tucked between ramshackle housing and a vacant lot. Before we saw it, we could hear it. The sounds of hundreds of young people laughing, shouting, and cheering on friends and family. A teenage football tournament, 7-a-side and entirely Burmese. Strangers in a strange land and maybe statistics to the outside world, but partying like it's their very own World Cup. This is something that I think is not specific to Myanmar, but around the world, when the word migrant worker or the word refugee is used, it paints a picture that means something other than this. But that's not true. This is, to me, if Daria's been to Yangon, I never have, but it's a city of cafes, nice restaurants. This is, I would say, as representative of Burmese food as finding the street carts in the market. Is that fair?
Yeah. Because that's a very interesting point, because I spent a lot of time in Singapore, and as you said, when we say 10, 15, 20 years ago, Myanmar food in Singapore is a bit more like roadside food that you can find in one of the food courts in Singapore. But let's say 10, 15 years ago, we started to see some nice Myanmar restaurants in where a lot of Myanmar people gather around for Saturday and Sunday community gathering. And I see the same thing happening in Thailand as well, because say if you came here 5 years ago, you wouldn't see this kind of restaurant, air conditioned, nice setting, good food, nice presentation. You wouldn't see that in Bangkok. Now you begin to see that.
This is Tin, and he's a friend I know through the food and beverage industry. He's Burmese and owns a handful of restaurants in Myanmar, and today he's brought me to a place that just 7 months ago was almost incomprehensible. An upscale restaurant packed with foreign customers, built from the ground up on land that when we filmed here back in February was just a quiet corner of the Bang Bon migrant worker market. How hard is it for somebody from Myanmar to adjust to a life starting again in Thailand?
I think it will be as hard to Myanmar people to go to a foreign country, to start a new life as it is for everybody else. If you go to a foreign land, you don't speak the language, the culture is different, and then you don't know the rules and regulations, and you're just trying to start your life. So as communities Myanmar communities develop overseas in Singapore, in Kuala Lumpur, in Thailand, you begin to see this kind of upscale Myanmar restaurants. It is part of the journey that Myanmar people take overseas. So that's interesting, when you bring this up, this makes me think about what happened to us in Singapore.
Opening a restaurant like this, the first of its kind anywhere near here, is a gamble, but it's not the first taken by these owners. This is actually the second venue owned by the team behind Kalyana, which we referenced in our last Burmese video as the very first place in Bangkok to attempt to bring Myanmar food to a wider audience. And while that place had just reopened at the time of our filming, it seems so far the more people try this unique and flavorful cuisine, the more it's starting to catch on. Now, Tin is not a chef, and the restaurants he owns, well, they're actually unique in one specific way.
There's a reason why we got to know you, and it has nothing to do with food, but it does have to do with the food industry, more or less, food and beverage?
Yes.
Beverage side of it?
Yes, beverage side.
So we have time, and it's a long story. We can talk as we're all eating, but tell me the broad strokes of it. The very first and still only craft brewery in Myanmar.
Yeah, actually, I was lucky enough to get a license to brew craft beer in Myanmar, and that was 2016. Actually, I started drinking craft beer back in 1998 when I first went to Singapore. And at the time, it was very new in Singapore as well. The first craft beer scene in Myanmar. That was way before any country had craft beer in Southeast Asia. So when I started drinking craft beer, I said, oh, this beer is very different and I like it. And I was studying in Singapore, and then I started working, and all the colleagues after work always go to a craft beer place. On Friday, we say liquid diet, so we just drink craft beer. And then, the joke was, okay, what do we do one day? When we all retire, what do we do? So the answer was, we are going to start a brew pub somewhere exotic in Southeast Asia, like Bali or Phuket or Pattaya. But we all got married, moved on with lives, moved to different country, different industry. And but we stay in touch with each other. And when I was moving back to Myanmar with a young family, and one of my ex-colleagues came back to me and said, hey, we talk about this project, and now you're going to Myanmar, why don't we start a brew pub in Myanmar?
Tin is in Bangkok today because as he's watched Thailand's Burmese community grow and started to notice signs that maybe the food and culture is beginning to reach the mainstream, well, just last week, he opened the first overseas branch of Burbrit Brewery, selling things like burgers and French fries, but also snacks like lepeto, salty and sour, and maybe, paired with pints of his homemade ales and lagers, a great way to introduce those foods to the masses at his new location right in downtown Bangkok.
What is so surprising, about Sukhumvit these days is when I walk around, I hear Myanmar's language all the time. In the street, you wouldn't expect that just 10 years ago. But last few months I've been back in Bangkok to start this pub, and I noticed that there are a lot of Myanmar people living and working and studying in Bangkok, and that is so obvious. You just cannot help noticing it, and it's no surprise that you have more Myanmar restaurants popping up everywhere in Bangkok.
Burbrit Brewery on Sukhumvit 22 is not a Burmese restaurant per se. It's a beer bar where some of the snacks just happen to be Burmese. And that, along with the expansion of foreign-facing restaurants like Kalyana, well, maybe it's just another fun side note in a global culinary city like Bangkok. But it's just as possible that in 10 years, we'll look at these places as the groundbreakers, the first milestones on the path that brings Burmese food from the factory cities into the mainstream. A few weeks ago on the channel, we covered the story of Hainan chicken rice, how Hainanese immigrants to Thailand, Singapore, and Malaysia started as the lowest workers on the economic ladder, but within a generation, their children or children's children would have saved up the money to open up their own businesses. They'd speak the local language while still knowing their family traditions, and that's how their food, unknown until the 1940s, eventually spread everywhere. Honestly, that's kind of a story for almost everything. Chinese food didn't really take off in the US or Europe until the children of the miners and railroad workers opened restaurants, first in places like San Francisco and then everywhere. So many of the cuisines and dishes that have spread globally started with migrants or refugees striving to give a better life to their children while keeping their own food traditions intact. And after that, with a bit of luck in the right environment, with trendsetters serving as the canaries in the coal mine, and of course with food good enough to win over anyone, well, maybe that's the formula. And hopefully, if one day Myanmar finally finds stability, if freedom and democracy return and political prisoners are released, by the time tourists can start to come again, they'll show up, because just like we all dream of baguettes in Paris or tacos in Mexico, it'll be worth a flight for a plate of lapetok and maybe a fresh brewed pint of Burbrit. Subscribe to the channel for more from OTR. Thank you so much to everyone who supports us on Patreon. It really helps to keep us going. Please click the link below for Patreon, Instagram, or any of our social media, and we'll see you next week.